Have Elizabeth here. Hey, Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry, my webcam is not coming up. I went out and grabbed or rebooted, and I'm afraid it's just not coming up.
Yeah, sometimes I think technology gave us problems. Wayne, you still there?
I'm here and I can't get my internet to work either. So I've got my audio, but I don't have any video at all.
Well,
Sorry about that.
well, Wayne,
Mine doesn't have anything to do with my camera. This has nothing to do with my camera. This is just my internet. I'm going to get on. It's just going to take me a second here. Hey, everybody. Glad you're out there. Elizabeth and I are both having some problems with our internet right now, one way or another. And mine's a little more severe. I don't know what's going on. We'll figure it out here. I'm trying to get on to the GoToWebinar from my unit, and it's not happening.
well, Wayne, I know that it's possible that we can both be on with the voice and that
Oh, we'll get going. Yeah, we'll get it going here. I'm just a second. I can't. I'm not one of those multitaskers typing and talking. So I'm doing a bunch of typing right now. So I'm going to have to. Mark, why don't you chat with Elizabeth, and Arif, you chat with Elizabeth and the audience for a second while I finish my typing here. I'm not a good multitasker when it comes to those two things at the same time. So.
No worries there. But Mark, what we can do is that we can officially start recording, and we will play her Elizabeth's video, and that way it will be a part of our recording, and then we can start away, and in that time, Wayne can jump on. Yep.
Well, no, Arif, please don't do the video first. I mean, that's not the order. Can't you guys just talk for a second?
No, it's a logo thing. It's a 9-second video, so it's just kind of an.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine.
So I will, Mark, just tell me when you will start recording, okay?
sure.
Sure. Not on my side. Just waiting for the video. Okay, I think we can officially start now. So, hey, Elizabeth, how are you?
Good, good. I'm sorry I'm having problems with my computer, but I know that Reeb has a copy of my slides, so you'll be able to share those with the audience.
Yeah, I will be able to do that. And as you said, that we start with your logo video. I think that part is done and is recorded. So took care of that. So you cannot even share your screen, like because it worked on the test webinar. So I'm not sure
Okay.
why it's giving problems with the camera now. So
Great.
I think we
Well,
will
at the
just talk a bit
appropriate
right
time,
now.
we'll do that. Great.
Yeah. So where are you at in the world right now? Just tell us. Let's
Uh,
start with that.
So SymSoil is headquartered in Fairfield, which is the county seat for Solano County of California. That puts us midway between San Francisco and Sacramento, and midway between Berkeley and UC Davis, two schools that have had a significant influence on agriculture.
Okay, wow. So yeah, I was going through your website. By the way, I love your Instagram page. I will be showing that around while you guys will be talking. I think Wayne will be on soon. So you made some new posts. So you just did that quickly, like yesterday?
Well, I knew you were going to be looking at it, so I figured I would show some of the scenes from our manufacturing site where we basically farm microbes, as well as pictures of our products.
Yeah, like looking good, looking good. Rodale Institute. I think we had someone from Rodale, yeah. Rodale
Yeah.
Institute.
And,
Awesome.
and I was delighted as I went through your website to see that you had Dr. Elaine Ingham, and you had shared with me that you thought that Wade was developing some kind of program with her, and that made me very excited. I think the more people that know about her work, the faster we get to making the world a better place. And if I have any theme that you can take away, it's that I'd like to see her concepts spread widely across all forms of farming, because I really would like to see people eat well.
That is the goal, and I think that's what our platform is about. Eat well. You're not eating well these days, so and I think the current condition is telling us that how it happened. So yeah, no, Elaine, I think Wayne is the right person to give you details on that because he had a call scheduled with him on
Yeah,
Friday.
guys, let's. This is Wayne. I am not going to be able to get on my internet today, so that's fine. I've actually got all the information about Elizabeth, and so if you guys can just handle the slides, I'm going to do just a little bit of an interview with her at the front end here. She's going to give a presentation, and then I'm going to just do a little bit more interviewing at the end. As just a little bit of preface based on what you guys were just discussing, I was on the phone with Elaine on Friday, excuse me, and Elaine and Luca, and Luke has been her business manager for a number of years, and I was on with her two board members also, and we are putting something together. Unfortunately, it's not like this is one of those where if I told you about it, I'd have to kill you. But it is one where at this point it's got a little bit of a surprise factor associated with it. When we bring it out, so I really can't talk in detail about it. But it's going to be exciting, and it's going to involve a number of different things, including a number of people that you've heard speak previously on the EAT platform. Just some very, very cool stuff. But anyway, Elaine and I are good friends, and Elaine's been on our platform, I think 5 times or 6 times. Mark, how many? 5 or 6? It looks like Mark's muted himself, but anyway.
It's several.
Yeah, it's been a few, and she actually has set the record. She's broke the bank with us. We're limited on our GoToWebinar sessions live at 1,000 people. And one of her sessions with us, we had about 1,200 that were trying to get on. The first 1,000 were on, and the other 200 had to come on when somebody else left. And I think that particular session, and again, I wish Mark was on because he can verify this a lot better than me. I think we went 6 hours. She was supposed to go an hour, and she went 5 more hours longer because there were that many questions, and she stayed on until basically everything was answered that people were having. It was so cool. So anyway, It's so cool to hear that you're connected there. Would you mind starting out by telling us just a little bit about your history, because it's interesting and it's not what everybody might think if they've studied a little bit from your website and so on. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of that, it'd be awesome.
Sure. So my family comes from San Francisco, and I actually grew up in Santa Cruz. I went to Berkeley as an undergraduate and ended up majoring in economic history. I had an interest in finance, and upon graduation, started working for a brokerage firm and then moved to the money management industries. So I spent 25 years as a portfolio manager, a director of research, or an analyst following large industries that had many moving pieces, and I'm very comfortable with complexity. The high point of my career was running a mutual fund for the Highmark family of mutual funds. I ran it for 3 years and earned my 4 stars from Morningstars. I'm a chartered financial analyst. I have an MBA from Berkeley, and the bank decided to restructure, and so I jumped to Northern Trust. And at Northern Trust, I was dealing with people who had successful individuals, wealthy families. Much of the wealth was tied to land in Sonoma, Napa, and Sacramento. I actually had 7 clients who had vineyards, and Northern is a great company. I have them in my own personal estate plan, but relative to working in small caps, the work was not as interesting as it had been, and I was frustrated. They decided to reorg, and I thought, wahoo, I get to do what I really want to do, which is work with small companies with an impact. And for the next 10 years, I bounced around, or I should say 7 years, bounced around with consulting with a number of different companies. And it was in that context that I met Dr. Ingham, Dr. E, and thought, wow, she's really got something here. She's got an interesting concept, but the way she teaches it assumes that you're going to be an independent sole proprietor or with a small company. You're going to find clients, you're going to make compost, you're going to manage those clients and solve their problem and run your business and do your marketing. And that's more than most normal humans can do. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if all these people that she trained could spend more time as consultants solving problems and knew that they had a supply of high quality compost that met her specifications to help their clients, to help build their business and help their clients more effectively. Because right now, if you think about the people who go through her program, the lowest value work they do is the actual physical labor of making the compost. The challenge is that her methodology, you could think of it as bench level, in that it's really built around small batches and skilled craftsmen. And the goal was to help those guys. If that's what they want to do, great. Let them come to work for us, be a supplier to us of the biology, and then let us farm that indigenous, the indigenous microbes. They're regionally specific. Let us farm those to create larger quantities and create product with more consistent quality, but with which hits her specs. That really was the origin of the business. Just with my business background, I didn't think that her concepts would reach the mainstream without, and you've got the quote up right now. The thing that grabbed my attention was, okay, she has interesting concepts. There's demand for the product. There's reasonable margins to be made. But then I learned that we are losing soil globally at the rate of about 3 soccer fields per second. And the FAO said in 2017, there's 60 years of food in humanity's future. And everything I've seen since then suggests that they've been overly optimistic.
So I'm a
Sorry.
little confused. No, that was great. But to be honest, I'm on your website right now, and I've done a little bit additional research. I didn't ask Elaine at all when we talked Friday because we were in somewhat of a rush about your business. And so I didn't have the benefit of learning a little more from her. So SymSoil, and you also have a partner, which I'd love to have you tell me a little bit more about also. But I'm still a little confused how if I'm a graduate of her academy, essentially, how, and I'm in Argentina, how would I use SymSoil?
You would not. You would not.
Okay.
You would need to be somewhere that was fairly close to where we had production, and you would then, let's say you were in Denver and we had a production facility nearby. Then you would be able to buy our material and use it to solve your customer problems. What we've done is we have found a way to mass produce to hit her specifications. So think of it this way. If she has the prescription drug that's going to help solve the world's soil health problems, which I believe she does, we have the generic drug that can make this more widely available, but it's still based on regionally specific, wild-caught local microbes.
Okay. So it's going to have to be, your last statement was the real key. It's going to have to be in a place where you've already done something to capture those local microbes, because a microbe here in northern Colorado is not going to be useful in Kansas, different in many, many ways, or in Santa Cruz. So,
right. So,
right.
So for example, we're talking to somebody about the possibility of putting in a hub in the Holyoke area. So that's northeastern Colorado, and actually that doesn't look that different from western Kansas. But I would not ship you California microbes unless I knew you were growing indoors.
Okay. Awesome. All right. What was that? What was there that went on in your life, either as a child, young adult, through the whole career in the investment world, that convinced you that this was important? Was it literally meeting Elaine, or was there other things as you look back? Were there other people? Were there other experiences that influenced you?
Well, first off, understand that I'm a fifth generation San Franciscan. So in the 1950s, 1 out of 5 Californians made their living from agriculture, directly or indirectly. Today, it's about 1 out of 25. But because of my family history, I'm very aware of how important agriculture is to the state. So there's a bias there already. In the investment world for the last couple of centuries, there has been this thesis that if you have extremely large wealth and you want to protect it across generations, across revolutions, across all the different kinds of economic environments that your family might encounter, you want to put it in farmland. So truly, where I started thinking about this area as interesting from a business perspective started in 2005, let's call it. I was marketing to Sonoma, Napa, Sacramento, Central Valley, thinking about agriculture in general and thinking about this thesis that wealth, large family wealth, which is what Northern really deals with, needs to have a portion of it in something that protects it across all these different kinds of economic environments. And forest land is historically where it's been. And I had, when I was running my small cap fund, an investment in AK Steel, which Nucor Steel has a process whereby they take used cars, and runs them through an arc welder, and out drops iron that's iron and steel that's useful, but cannot go back into cars because the quality is not high enough. So that most of that steel ends up in construction. Well, where does forestry products go? It goes into construction, and it goes into paper. And you start thinking about, 2005, we still thought we'd have less paper over time. So forestry didn't seem like as strong a thesis as it had been for centuries. And I began to think about farmland because everywhere in the world we have that farming is possible. We have already brought farming to it. And as you think about the developing world, and the world looked very different in 2005 than it does today, but as people get higher and higher incomes, which was the trend in China and India and other countries that were developing, they eat more proteins. And so 1 pound of chicken requires 6 pounds of grain. 1 pound of beef requires 10 pounds of grain. And it seemed to me there would be more and more pressure on food. And I started thinking about farmland as an investment thesis, as an alternative to forest land. And I still think that that's valid, that over time, one of the best, over long periods of time, one of the best performing asset classes is going to be farmland. So in that context, I started thinking about soil and how do you make soil, farmland more productive.
That makes total sense. That's great. Let me just ask you a couple more questions, and then I think why don't you go ahead and do your presentation that you have. And I don't know whether it's going to be Mark or Reed that help you with the slides, or whether you're going to go with them, because I don't know if you've solved your internet situation. But we've got a double whammy going on here, everybody. By the way, Mark, you're going to have to help us with questions anytime they come in. And please, everybody, ask some questions here as we move along. My couple, Mark, do you have anything yet that we should throw in? Well, they're probably related to, let's let her do her presentation first, but everybody keep throwing those questions in. And I'm sure, Mark, you can judge whether they'll be relevant right after, or after maybe she and I talk a little bit more. But thank you, everybody, for throwing in questions. Thank you for being patient with the technical difficulties that we're having. Two last questions for you about sort of so people can get to know you a little bit better. As you were in the investment world and you were working with these high net worth folks, and then specifically even with those somehow already involved in agriculture, and from that period till today, do you believe that high net worth individuals in general really even care? Or do they just know that they get their food and they really haven't ever had any problems with it yet? And why should they really care? Because they're going to be able to get their food. They're wealthy. Even if even less fortunate people can't, they're still going to be able to get the food they need and they want.
That's a really great question. There are people who are affluent who are very concerned about climate change, and their focus is carbon sequestration. So they're very supportive from the perspective that soil-based soil-based carbon sequestration is the most efficient way to go. They are also generally well educated and very attuned to the fact that California is in a drought, has been in a drought, will be in the drought in the future, but this is much more widespread than just California. This is happening in many parts of the country. I don't know the degree to which they're thinking about it in terms of like social justice, but I am very personally aware that shopping in farmers markets and buying organic food is a function of both having time and having disposable income. And I personally would like to see everything in my local Safeway or Bargain Grocery or Smart and Final that have been grown with products that are based on regenerative agriculture. I think that they shouldn't be just for people who have the disposable income to pay a lot more. Yes, it'd be great if everybody was growing their own food and had their own gardens. But for a mother with a single woman with a couple of children, that's not realistic. For somebody who is squeezing as much as they can out of every paycheck, that's not realistic. And I'd like to make it easy for them to eat well.
Super. Well, let's do this. Why don't we see about getting your presentation? Or, again, I asked it earlier. Mark or Reeve, are you going to do the slides, or is Elizabeth going to do it?
I do have a copy of the slides, but Elizabeth, do you want to share screen or do you want me to play it? I can
Why
do it.
don't you send me the share screen
Yeah.
message?
And here you go.
Perfect, perfect. So here's our logo. We are all about microbes for the soil, and just like Dr. Ingham, we are focused on the complete soil microbiome. I'm speaking to a fairly sophisticated audience, the people who are part of the EAT community. So I'm just going to buzz through the science really quickly. I thought I'd start by telling you about the company's products, then run through the science quickly, and then some of the other materials. So basically, as you know, Healthy Soil has 20,000 to 30,000 microbes in it. What Dr. E calls soil food web or biocomplete, we like to use the term robust. I think it's very important that the regenerative ag movement develop a vocabulary that clearly distinguishes this product from commodity compost, which is a product that's made by bacteria and bacterial decomposition and has no complexity. Sometimes it's sterile, sometimes it has 2 species of bacteria, but typically one has come to dominate. And we also need to make it very distinguished for the purposes of regulators and measurement and grant writing from ag biologics, which when I started this business in 2017 was $1 billion industry. It's now an $8.3 billion industry. So it's growing rapidly, but robust compost with the multiple types of life, with the thousands of species, is just a completely different thing. And we need the vocabulary so that people recognize it as something different. So we're putting out and promoting the definition of robust compost as having at least 7 types of life, and DNA analysis that demonstrates it has in excess of 1,000 species. Our product happens to have over 2,000 species, but I wanted to make this a hurdle that anyone who was in the process of manufacturing soil food web or similar kinds of products could use that definition and prove that their product was of that caliber easily. Again, I'm talking to a very sophisticated audience who understands the importance of working with soil microbiome. These are just typical pictures that I have pulled from the internet. This happens to be one of Dr. Ingham's projects. I believe it was in Lucerne, ranch land, treated and untreated. This was an interesting picture on labeled as the Rodale Institute turf trials. This was never published, and I'm not sure exactly why, but I'm delighted that I have a picture that can demonstrate this. I often use the picture on the other side that shows the different types of different root growth, just with the comment that we're helping plants get their nutrients the way that nature intended. You know, feeding plants, and again, I know you all know this, so I'm sorry to cover old ground, but feeding plants chemical fertilizers is like feeding your child sugar, lots of sugar, and only sugar. Sure, they're hyper and they're alive, but they're not healthy. And that's essentially what we've done to plants. SymSoil has three main products. We have the robust compost, the RC. This is based on Dr. Ingham's Soil Food Web, and we attempt to hit those specifications. We have a product that we call fungal infused biochar. It was developed by us independently of knowing that David Johnson existed. It's very different from what he calls fungal infused biochar. Our product is conditioned for immediate use because most of you know that if you get raw biochar, you have to activate it or condition it so that it doesn't starve the plants during that period when it's becoming coated with the biofilm. We add to it minerals, we add to it fungal food, we add to it fungal spores, and we add to it enough of the RC so that it has the biology that will kick off the spores once it's in the ground. It very quickly can move soil to a fungal dominant state, and we can mass produce it. Whereas Dr. Johnson's work, just like Dr. Ingham's, is all small batch. He achieves with his Johnson Sue Beam technology fabulous fungal to bacteria ratios, but they're not sustainable for mainstream, or I shouldn't say sustainable, they're not available to mainstream farming. And then our most popular product is actually the V50. It is a 50-50 blend of the compost and the fungal infused biochar. This product is used by the grapevine growers, the wine grape growers, and by the canvas growers, about 1 cup per pot for the canvas growers, or about a shovelful or a quarter of a cubic foot per vine as they put their clones in the ground. A lot of people want to know what it's going to cost the farmers. So the robust compost, we recommend it be converted into a compost extract. We happen to be fans of the GOT 250 machine. It can convert 1 cubic yard into over 6,000 gallons. So that is the most cost-effective way to distribute across large acreage. The fungal infused biochar is more expensive. You do need more of it. It needs to be thought of as a capital investment, which is a surprisingly hard concept for farmers to get because they're used to thinking about their costs on an annual basis. And then the V50, it depends on how much you use. If you're using a shovelful per grapevine, it's $5.50. If you're using a cupful per pot of potted plant where you're putting your clone in, it's 70 cents. So these products, we believe, are reasonably priced for the market and not terribly expensive. For those people who are interested in talking about the carbon sequestration effects, the Rodale Institute has done some work with a manure-based, but we believe biocomplete compost, and they were able to demonstrate that they could sequester 2.5 tons of CO2 per year. The research done by Dr. David Johnson says that his material can sequester 10.2 metric tons per hectare. As I've tried to convert that, I think that turns into 16 CO2e units per acre per year. He actually 46 metric tons per hectare over a 4.5 year period. That's where the 10.2 number comes from. So we are looking for funding so we can run some trials and see what we can do. But the 50-50 will be somewhere in the midpoint between those two. The challenge with the soil food web, as I'm sure your audience really can appreciate, is the complexity, which makes it very difficult to explain. This is from the Frontiers of Microbiology, an academic paper that was published about 3 years ago that was talking about the soil microbiome. This is how they explain the soil food web, the image labeled A, and then they had to explain it further with a second image the image labeled B. It's obviously quite complex. This is one of my favorite ways of showing it because it breaks out the different levels of consumers. But if you don't mind, I would like to run through this in about a minute and a half. I know your audience already knows it, but just in case anybody watches this video who doesn't, in nature, plants combine sunlight and carbon dioxide into photosynthesis. Christine Johnson talks about it in phases. If you think about water, you have 3 phases. You have steam, you've got water, and then you've got ice. Carbon has the same kind of thing. In the air, you have the gaseous version. And through photosynthesis, it gets converted into a liquid and sugars and carbohydrates, and then it goes into the ground where this process is going to convert it into solids and store it in the ground. That's the solid state. So the plants create photosynthesis in the form of sugars. They extrude 40 to 70%, depending upon the plant, depending upon the cycle it's in, etc., out through the roots. And that feeds the next, the rhizosphere, the next level of the soil food web, the fungi and bacteria. They're living right at the roots, eating those sugars, and in the course of their life, they are absorbing these key elements, the nitrogen, the potassium, the phosphorus, the NPK, that 150 years ago, they thought this process that we're describing as the soil food web was strictly chemical. These are in turn are consumed by the next higher trophic level, and the largest component of that are the amoebas. The protozoas, the amoebas, the flagellates, and the ciliates. And when they consume bacteria or fungi, they typically consume 3 or 4 times as much nitrogen as they actually need, and they spit it back out in a plant available form. The other part of the second trophic level is the nematodes. Now, they can be eating the bacteria, they can be eating the fungi, they can be eating the protozoa, they can be eating each other, they may be eaten by the fungi. They're certainly eaten by the final trophic level, the arthropods. And these are the microscopic insects, such as the soil mites, that are crawling through. They're creating little pockets of air and water and chewing up the organic matter that's left behind by the leaves and the branches and so on. Again, I know the people on this call understand this, but it's very hard to talk about SymSoil without talking about the science, because so many people don't get it. They're still trapped in that mindset of 150 years ago of the chemistry of it. So basically what SymSoil does is we have a patent pending on a process whereby we farm these different microbes, and then we blend them with commodity compost as well as with biochar to mass produce this product. And then we can tailor it according to what is needed. And we can't overstate the importance of the soil microbiome. It's been said that all of human life exists because of what happens in the top 6 inches and the fact that it rains. In 1 acre of healthy soil, the soil microbiome has the same weight as 2 elephants. And humanity, with all of our hubris about what we understand and that spirograph graph and so on, it's estimated that a little less than a third of the soil microbes are actually known, and identified. So basically, sorry to be redundant, but what we do is replicate the soil food web and then tailor the products specifically to the farm's needs. And that's where these soil food web consultants come in. They're the interface to the farmer customer or to the community farms or however they position themselves. Basically, this is just the overview of our farm. You know, it's got heavy equipment. We give a regulatory tracking. We handle distribution. We sell in 1 cubic yard totes or in half cubic yard bags. You'll see that you saw that our bags are breathable. That was one of the things we had to learn. Basically, we're doing the farming of biology, the materials management, and working skilled labor. This is just another schematic of what we're doing. Commodity compost, a low value agriculture input, comes in on the front, and a finished product comes out on the back end that's full of this biology. I talk about the fungi because it's something that regulators can understand. In fact, it's everything we're doing that combines, but the fungi is easy for people to understand. If you're following us on Instagram, you'll see that in February, when there was lots of fungi near where I live, I started spending the month talking about the fungal component of the soil food web. Then we moved on to the protozoa. This month we're doing the nematodes, and next month we'll be doing the arthropods because there's, just like everything else, a wide variety of them. They have a variety of different ways of interacting with their compatriots, if you will. And we are currently talking to investors about putting hubs in a variety of places. These are all the places where we have existing letters of intent. Probably the next ones going in will be in Colorado. And I just sent a proposal off to the investors in Pennsylvania. So we are committed to California, but it was my experience with investors that they wanted something that was close to them, and many of them in other parts of the country were not interested in funding the company as a California company. So we've set our legal structure up very much the way a restaurant chain would fund a restaurant chain would fund a region. It's available to accredited investors. People are welcome to call me about it, but basically it's got a 7% yield, and then we pay the cash flow from the project. And with that, I will turn the screen back to you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. That's great. Again, I wasn't able to watch that because I'm not able to log in to GoToWebinar right now, but I've been studying your website and studying your LinkedIn page and doing a number of other searches here that I did before the webinar and also now. And so I think the audience has got a lot better picture of what it is that you're doing, and I do also. At this moment in time, if one of our audience would like to help SymSoil in some way, is it mainly a funding issue at this point? It sounds like you have all the projects you could possibly handle that are giving you letters of intent and so on. But it sounds like funding is maybe your biggest need.
Funding is our biggest need right now. Anywhere that we have a letter of intent, it's our hope to, let me rephrase that. Anywhere where we have the funding, we will have product in the market within 12 months. And assuming that we get through the regulatory hurdles pretty fast, it could be as little as 120 days. So please let us know the indications of interest. That is super helpful when we're talking to investors. We do have some material that we are sending out, but our preference is to hold back on that so that it's available to investors so that they can run their own demonstration. We'll be setting up later this month a live feed from a greenhouse in southern Colorado so that people can see in real time how the plants respond. We hope to have a couple of these up within the next couple of months. And we'll have a link on our website so that people can see that.
And I've gone through your press releases, and it looks like that you've had some interest and some success in the cannabis industry. Has that been in indoor farming or in field-based farming situations?
Both. And we have worked with hydroponic facilities that are using rock-wool grow cubes. That's not our preference, but we get called in when they have problems with fusarium or powdery mildew or other types of nematodes, whatever their particular problem is. The truth is that let me start that slightly differently. If you think about wine grape farmers, the difference between a $10 bottle and a $100 bottle is really the chemistry of the grapes and the skill of the winemaker, but even more so the terroir. And the same is true with cannabis. In both cases, you have farmers who are unique in that they're looking at their crop at the level of chemistry. And so it's easier for them to see that if you change the chemistry, you change what the plant, if you change the biology, you change the chemistry that the plant produces. This is true for all farmers. They call it flavor as opposed to terpenes or flavonoids or some of the other terms. And the other farmers are not as quick to think about it in terms of soil biology. But it's my belief that this is changing, and Dr. Ingham's work is really a key to that. Do you mind if I just go off on that topic for just a couple of seconds?
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was going to ask you about that in just a little bit, but go ahead.
Sure. Well, Dr. Ingham wrote the original papers 40 years ago. And one question that investors often come back with is, why, if she wrote these papers 40 years ago, why hasn't that caught on? Why does it appear to be catching on now? And obviously, there's a generational shift occurring where the older farmers who may be more set in their ways are turning the farms over to younger people who may be more open and receptive. And the cannabis, legalization of cannabis has accelerated that by bringing new participants and an interest in new and more effective ways of doing things. All of those feed in the same way that you could argue that the Prius changed how people thought about cars and inevitably led to the rise of the Tesla. But more importantly, if you look at Nobel Prize winners who make really radical new discoveries, it takes 40 years on average before those ideas reach the mainstream. They call this the diffusion of innovation or the diffusion of intellectual capital or the emergence of new ideas. It's actually a field of study now, but by that measure, we're right on track. It's no surprise that Dr. Ingham was writing her papers in the early 80s that kicked this off, and regenerative ag is now becoming on the forefront of what young farmers are thinking about.
And some of what I know is on your heart. Tell us about some crops on a worldwide basis that really worry you, that if we don't do something about in the future,
Well, I got involved with this. I got involved with this because I was involved with a startup that was working with a major multinational in the banana industry, and um, I'm not sure how much I can say about that other than the Sigatoka fungus and tropical race 4 are worrying the major banana companies. And it seems to me that there are pathogens emerging all over the world that are attacking microbes and, I'm sorry, attacking microbes that are attacking plants. And the banana guys are further along the path because they experienced this with the Grow Michael that was the banana that our grandparents ate. We don't see it anymore. It was wiped out as a commercial crop. And it was very difficult for them to find a new banana because bananas don't have seeds. All bananas, whether they call it a plantain or a mini, are basically Kavanaugh grown from clones. So that's one example, but you can go to the Midwest and talk to people about corn tar or hay tar. That's a relatively new fungi that is attacking their crops. You can talk to the grapevine guys and they'll tell you about red blotch disease. I mean, every crop around the world has some new pathogen. And I believe it's because we have eliminated the beneficial microbes that historically have outcompeted the pathogens.
If a person is working with a soil situation that has been highly degraded by its previous use, so an overgrazed, a field that's been overgrazed by livestock and literally the soils have just been completely depleted. A farm anywhere in the Midwest that has been the practice of industrial ag with huge quantities of ammonia and water poured on it, and essentially all that the soil is now is not soil, it's dirt, and it's a foundation for the above ground portion of the plant and a minuscule circumstance for its roots. How long about will it take to rejuvenate soils in any of those kinds of circumstances once the right kind of soil web mentality and action is placed, so that a compost is placed on and so on? Is this a 1-year process? Is it a 10-year process, or is it a really long 100-year process? Because I think sometimes people don't understand whether soils are resilient or not.
Yeah, I have a picture which I will post to Instagram shortly, which shows ryegrass grown from seed in 119 days. This was actually taken, the picture was taken from one of Dr. Ingham's lectures. It was an example from 2002. And the land was considered almost so depleted that nothing could grow there. And they used some of her soil food web compost and one application of compost tea. And the roots are as long as the man who is holding this plant up, and they crop this down on a regular basis. So that's what's possible. As long as the water can get through and the biology can get through, then the roots can get through. The challenge is, in many cases in these farms, you've got a zone of compressed soil that's been caused by the tillage, and you may need to break that up. And so that's why our firm recommends low tilling our preference would be no tilling, but sometimes you encounter soil that's been so badly damaged or needs to be conditioned, and that's where the fungal infused biochar, that's where the V50 can be used very effectively to change the character of the land. Dr. Ingham believes that with robust compost, you can get the soil that has been completely deleted back to a healthy nature within 1 year, comparable to what an organic farmer can spend 10 years working on. When I look at shows like movies like The Greatest Little Farm, I'm struck by the amount of work and effort that goes into restoring those soils. That should be much easier to do with, and it is, with the right biology reseeded and put into place. And that's how I think of the SymSoil products. We're interested in helping farmers reseed these microbes, the right microbes for the area that they're in.
Well, that's exactly what I believe that you would be saying about it. So Mark, let's go to some questions from the audience. We just have a few minutes left, but we'll go, I think, a little longer if we need to with the questions, because we were dominating this here. So Mark, why don't you read us some questions?
Mark, the second question broke up, so I'm going to have you repeat it. But before you do that, let me address the first question. This is a two-part answer. First off, the microbes are specific to the region because of the weather patterns, because of the chemistry of the rocks that make up the soil. The crops are determined by that as well. So it's the microbes that do well with those crops, as well as the microbes that are specific to those types of weather patterns. And it really is true that slightly different valleys will have a slightly different blend. There is some overlap if they're close to one another, but the microbes on the other side of the Rocky Mountains are quite different from the ones in California.
The second question, Elizabeth, was related to, I think, what you've already answered, and that is that if you were in a specific location where you didn't think there'd been any application of a SymSoil solution or any of Elaine's procedures, would the farmer in that area send you a soil sample for you to analyze, or if they knew of a graduate of Elaine's course process, could they send a soil sample to someone like that, or does it not need a soil sample? Could they just tell you where they were at?
Definitely need a soil sample. And right now we are no longer set up for the lab. We were for an extended period using somebody who was a graduate of the Soil Food Web Institute. We hope to have somebody back on payroll soon. And so I would say send it to whoever you know who's a local Soil Food Web graduate. I also strongly recommend the use of the microbiometer. Microbiometer is not as detailed account as seeing it through the microscopy, and it's not as easy to talk to your customers if you're a Soil Food Web consultant about the numbers without showing them the biology that gets them excited. There's real value to the microscopy, but if you're a farmer and you want a quick and dirty analysis of the soil biology, and you want to do it on a regular basis or on multiple locations on your farm, the microbiometer can very quickly give you a fungal to bacteria ratio. And then you can use that same test to compare it to other, other locations on the farm or across time. But
Okay.
it's just the fungal to bacteria ratio. It's not the full soil food web counts of the different amounts of different types of protozoas and the different types of the different types of nematodes and whether they're root-eating nematodes or beneficial nematodes. So it's a different animal, but it's very cost effective. It's very fast, and it's the computer version of it.
All right. Mark, do you have some others? I have another one. Well, Mark's just getting ready to read one. How about your, and I think I know the answer to this, and I'm going to chuckle as I say it. How about your soil, your extension agent for wherever you're at in the country?
We have been in business for 3.5 years, and we have spent most of that time focused on developing this new technology. People, investors have criticized us for not having spent enough time marketing. They've criticized us for not running field trials. It's very important to us, and it's part of what we hope to do in our next phase. Every land grant university or college in the country has an agricultural department, and we very much want to tap into that. If I had my brothers, we'd start with Chico and San Luis Obispo and the University of Wisconsin and Cornell. I always get Cornell and Columbia confused. The one that's not New York City. They all have.
That's Cornell.
Yes, Cornell. They all have great compost focused programs, and we want to start working with them as soon as we can. So yes, the extension programs are a great place to go, but it's at this point it's a bit hit or miss whether they're chemically oriented or organic oriented. Depends on the location, depends on the person you get.
Yeah, I'm a lot more of a cynic about that than you are. So I bet 99% of soil extension agents in the United States would not be the right people to talk about related to soil health. They are bought and owned by Cargill and Monsanto and all the other large industrial farming groups that essentially pay their salaries. So
I'm chronically optimistic. So I believe that the executives in Cargill and McDonald's and Kellogg's and all of the other large organizations, they would like to be part of regenerative ag. They just can't figure out how to scale it. Let me give you one example. So I was speaking to the head of one of the largest vineyard nurseries in California. And when I showed him what we were doing, he was like, oh my God, we will come out with a product that's SymSoil branded, because I took Dr. E's classes in 2007. I know that this works. I just can't figure out how to bring it in my professional life because it's not scalable. I can't get my hand on enough material with consistent enough quality to put this out as part of what my company is doing. And if you can deliver that, I will build a product line around it. I think we're going to see more and more of that. It's not that these companies don't, I'm leaving Monsanto and Bayer aside for a moment. It's not that these large agricultural companies don't believe that this works. It's that they can't figure out how to use it. Because
you put glyphosate on any soil and it kills it. So I don't think Monsanto is going to be too positive about it in the short term, at least. When that product, a multi-billion-dollar a year product for them. So anyway, I'm sorry, I am a cynic about that. Mark, what else do you have question-wise?
No, and we've made we have made a conscious decision to not pursue soil remediation. The opportunity with agriculture and changing conventional agriculture to biological farming is so large that it would be distracting to go in too many directions. We already have criticism from some investors that were too easily distracted going from cannabis and vineyards to, let's say, golf courses. But in the Coachella Valley, where Palm Springs is, they use 100 million gallons of water per year. It's very hard for me not to look at that and say, we've got a solution. We've got two different actions of mechanisms of action that can reduce irrigation needs. Let's use them. Let's start talking to golf courses. Let's start talking to community farms, because my passion is let's get better food into low-income neighborhoods. And that may leave people with the impression we're distracted. We're not. We're just recognizing that as we scale and as we seek funding, we want funding for multiple salespeople, each of which will be tasked with going after a different type of group with the same science behind it. When we're manufacturing our product, most of our microbes prefer a humidity level that's between 45 and 50%. We're using a different testing methodology than Dr. Ingham's. We're using sensors that we have developed that allow us to have a more accurate read of that number.
And are those described in your website or Instagram pages or somewhere else?
No, that's proprietary.
Okay. All right. Any more, Mark?
We talk to people off and on. We look forward to working with them. We typically get those calls when they have some kind of pathogen problem. But at this point, we have not actively sought that out. I believe that in the long run, that is the future of food for most humans. I personally believe that, and I think most people who follow technology believe that all technologies that are really new start niche and expensive and solving a specific problem for a specific group of people. Over time, they become much more widely adopted and much lower priced. So when you think about indoor agriculture, you think about 10 years ago, the only people doing it were the cannabis growers. And then it became the way that lettuce was grown in Dubai and Tokyo and baby vegetables for restaurants in Las Vegas. Today, there are hydroponic facilities and indoor greens every city in America. But if you think about humanity and the growth of the human population and their desire to eat well and to eat more and better, indoor agriculture in places like the Gobi Desert are inevitable because I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox now, but Americans don't realize how truly blessed we are. 32% of the land in America is farmland. We have 1/4 of the population that China has. They've got the same land mass, but only about 8% of their land is farmland. And the rest of it is mountains and desert. So they've got solar, they've got water. Indoor ag is inevitable in much of the world. And SymSoil long-term hopes to be selling them the soil microbes from places like the Silicon Valley for their indoor agriculture to say, hey, we are here to provide you with the tools you need to make that food more nutritious, more flavorful. And that right into vertical farming, whether they're spraying the roots or using some medium, it fits right into those grows. They're using LEDs. I mean, there's a lot of components to indoor agriculture, and SymSoil would like to be there for all of them.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. And Elizabeth, thank you for your patience. We've gone over here. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to make sure you impart to us and to our audience so that they can come away with?
We would love to hear from you. We have been slow with shipping because we've been very short-handed. Some of that is only having the one location. Some of that is COVID. Some of that is some of the funding challenges we've had during the last year. It's gone much slower than we expected, but we are rebounding, coming back, and our goal is to help farmers everywhere, starting with the US, but then expanding throughout the world.
Awesome. And what's the best way for people to reach out and to get a hold of you if they have questions?
833-SymSoil or info@symsoil.com, both of which are on our website and our
Awesome.
Instagram page.
Sounds good. Mark, any other questions? Because sometimes people will get triggered to do more after they've heard several others. While he's looking, if you haven't looked at their website, it's really very good, everybody. And so go to SymSoil.com. It's really that simple. And there's there's blog articles, there's podcast info, there's press releases. It's an excellent web page and lots of great information. Mark, you say you got another one? Okay. I'm a little bit like you. I'm going to end on this note. I am positive about the future as it relates to regenerative agriculture in general, and you can't be doing regenerative agriculture not improving soil quality. But I really wish that we would get some big player that take it on, and then we could have a huge case study victory. And I don't mean big necessarily by being numbers of acres. It would be someone that's really high profile with whatever kind of crop it might be. And it could be asparagus, it could be lettuce, it could be kale, it could be cannabis, it could be the wine industry. But we really need something like that, And so if you guys can help find some funding for groups like SymSoil, that would be awesome. And that's anybody in our audience that's listening and watching this. Or if you've got some ideas of places and or industries that SymSoil could be used, please let us know. And because we need to see those victories. So.
Wayne, thank you very much. We hope to make some announcements shortly that include some household names that may help catalyze exactly what you're thinking about.
Awesome. Well, Elizabeth, you've been great, and I think audience, you've been great too. Thank you for putting up with a little bit of our technical difficulties and not being able to see webcam from me and Elizabeth, but the slides and everything sound like they went really well. Reed, thank you for your help. Mark, thank you. Again, audience, thank you. We've got more webinars coming up. Again, another one next week from, let's see, Mark, tell us a couple of those that are coming up in the near future. Yeah. And so a week from today, and tomorrow night I do my regular weekly webinar that's very specific to Environmental Professionals Network. And anybody that's got interest in that, you can come to that, and we're going to be talking about projects and other things that we're doing there. And then next Monday, and just keep coming back. We're always having new ones. Elizabeth, thank you. Throw in some ones, everybody, for applause, if you will. And Mark, give us about 10 seconds here. Elizabeth, maybe say goodbye. I'll say goodbye right now and then take us out.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am delighted to be working with the EAT community in this capacity and hope to work with you more in the future.
Well, we would love that.